Have you ever imagined that the most despised woman, the one they considered fragile and useless, was actually a magnate with a salary of $1 million a month? This is the story of Aria Moore, abandoned in a hospital bed by her husband, Ryan Vance, after he seized all her assets and left her with cruel words to marry another woman. The situation seemed desolate. The luxury mansion in Bel Air and all our assets. I've taken them all. I've handed them over to my new fiancé. But what happened 2 days later? Ryan, in a state of absolute panic, desperately called Aria. His entire fortune had vanished in an instant. You won't believe how Aria, keeper of a monumental secret, turned the tables. Get ready, because you are about to witness the most humiliating downfall. Before we start, I need your help. Like this video, subscribe to the Apex Stories channel so you don't miss other shocking narratives, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. Finally, leave a comment below with your city's name. Let's see how far Aria's story can travel. Ready? If so, take a deep breath. We begin. The air in the VIP room of a prestigious private clinic in Beverly Hills was cold and smelled of disinfectant, a sharp contrast to the wildfire burning in Aria's chest. She lay in bed, seemingly weak. Her pale face was not due to the grave illness Ryan believed she had, but extreme exhaustion, severe burnout caused by the double pressure of secretly running a multinational tech corporation, Ascendant Dynamics, while feigning to be a simple homemaker in front of her arrogant husband. Since their wedding 5 years ago, Aria had always kept her true financial situation secret. She allowed Ryan to enjoy the fantasy of being a successful businessman, the owner of a luxury life, and the stable family provider. But all that opulence, from the mansion to the high-end sports cars, was actually the fruit of Aria's labor, camouflaged through shell corporations managed by her lawyer, Mr. Harrison. She did it to protect the fragile ego of Ryan, who had always belittled her. But today, Aria's patience had reached its limit. The sound of the room door abruptly opening woke her. Ryan entered, but he wasn't alone. Beside him, a young woman with heavy makeup and conspicuously revealing clothes accompanied him, radiating the same repulsive aura of arrogance. It was Tiffany Wells, Ryan's mistress, whom Aria had only heard rumors about. Ryan approached with a cold smile. Tiffany, meanwhile, stood by the door with her arms crossed, scanning Aria from head to toe with a look full of disdain. In her eyes, Aria was nothing more than a sickly woman, a useless burden. Ryan dragged a chair and sat on the edge of Aria's bed, showing not the slightest concern. On the contrary, his gaze was charged with disgust and uncontrolled pleasure. Aria tried to sit up, but her head spun. She looked at her husband with questioning eyes, expecting an explanation for the stranger's presence. "What are you doing here, Ryan?" Aria's voice was barely a broken whisper. Ryan let out a chuckle, a sharp sound that turned her stomach. "Oh, my poor adorable wife, do you still have the nerve to ask? Isn't it obvious? I've come to say goodbye, Aria." Aria felt her heart pound with fury. Although she expected this to happen, hearing it directly from Ryan's lips was still painful. "To say goodbye?" she asked again, trying to maintain her composure. Ryan stood up and walked toward the window, as if delivering a speech to a captivated audience. "Yes, to say goodbye. I'm fed up, Aria. Fed up with your sick wife drama, fed up with your pale face, fed up with all your complaints. I need a woman who can accompany me, who boosts my career, not a burden lying uselessly in a hospital." He turned and, with a theatrical gesture, pointed to Tiffany. "Look at Tiffany, healthy, gorgeous, full of life. She will be my perfect wife." Tiffany smiled contemptuously and gave Aria a mocking wave. Aria felt the air leave her lungs. The pain in her chest was no longer from exhaustion, but from profound betrayal. "So, you're divorcing me?" she asked as tears began to well up in her eyes. Ryan laughed, this time louder, more insulting. "Divorce? Don't worry, I've already handled everything. My attorney filed the petition yesterday afternoon. You just have to sign. Easy, right?" He approached again, leaning his face close to Aria's. His voice dropped to a sharp, venomous whisper. "But that's not the important thing, Aria. There's something else you should know." Ryan pulled a thick wad of documents from inside his jacket and shook it in the air. "All our assets. Everything you've enjoyed so far, the luxury mansion, the sports cars, the joint accounts, all the investments are mine. I've transferred all the properties. I've given the mansion to Tiffany as a wedding present. You won't receive a single dollar. I've made sure of it." Ryan laughed again, a laugh full of triumph and arrogance. Arya looked at the papers with vacant eyes, but behind that wounded look, a flame of vengeance began to burn. She watched Ryan, her ignorant husband, strutting around like a magnate who had successfully swindled his wife. Arya knew that at this moment, Ryan was merely dancing on a stage she herself had constructed. Tiffany finally walked fully into the room and began rifling through Arya's nightstand. "My God, this woman has such terrible taste. Ryan, darling, look at these pajamas, they look like something my grandma would wear." Tiffany threw Arya's sleepwear onto the floor with contempt. Ryan just smiled, not stopping her, seeming to enjoy the humiliation Arya was suffering. "She's always been that way, Tiffany. Old-fashioned, no style, and most importantly, no passion for life. She could never measure up to you." Ryan embraced Tiffany in front of Arya and gave her a tender kiss on the forehead, a calculated act to hurt her even more deeply. "Well, we're leaving, Arya," Ryan said, guiding Tiffany out of the room. "Enjoy what's left of your illness, and don't even think about coming back to that house when you leave the hospital. It's Tiffany's now. We're getting married the day after tomorrow. Thanks for these 5 boring years. Goodbye, sickly wife." Ryan and Tiffany left, leaving Arya alone in the room, in what seemed like total collapse. Arya's tears finally fell, not from sadness over losing Ryan, but from rage at having been so thoroughly underestimated. She closed her eyes, waiting for the pain to pass. As soon as they left, she immediately grabbed the cell phone she had hidden beneath her pillow. Her hands were shaking, but not from weakness. She looked up a name, Attorney Harrison. Mr. Harrison was her personal lawyer. Aside from her best friend, Chloe, he was the only person who knew her true identity, the CEO of a gigantic artificial intelligence tech company with monthly earnings of $1 million. A fact Ryan, too busy with his own vanity, never bothered to discover. The assets that were until now in Ryan's name were nothing more than disguised properties managed by Mr. Harrison. Everything had been bought with Arya's money and could be easily reclaimed thanks to a bulletproof prenuptial agreement that Ryan had signed without reading the details. "Mr. Harrison, get here right now," Arya commanded. Her voice had become cold and authoritative. She was no longer the weak wife, but the corporate leader. "Bring all the asset recovery documents and prepare a counter-divorce suit against Mr. Vance. I want it filed today. I want him to know that the woman he called sickly has just declared war." Arya exhaled, staring intently at the door Ryan had just closed. "And Mr. Harrison, make sure he cannot take a single dime of my corporate assets. I want him to lose everything. Effective immediately, we execute the $1 million plan." Arya leaned back on the bed. The pain in her heart had transformed into steel determination. She would let Ryan and Tiffany enjoy their false victory for one day. She would let them celebrate a party in the house Arya would soon reclaim. She swore to herself that she would make Ryan regret for the rest of his life having traded the woman who provided his fortune for a simple gold-digger mistress. She closed her eyes and imagined the faces of Ryan and his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, who had always despised her, when her true identity was revealed to the public. She would ensure this revenge was the most expensive spectacle they had ever seen. A spectacle financed by Arya's $1 million monthly income. That night, in the cold hospital bed, Arya ceased being the patient wife and became the ruthless CEO. Arya wasted no time. As soon as Ryan and Tiffany disappeared through the door, she immediately called her best friend, Chloe Davies. Chloe was Arya's only bridge to the real world, the world where she was not a sick, belittled wife, but a respected, successful executive. Chloe, who was at Arya's company headquarters, was surprised to hear her friend's cold, decisive voice. Arya briefly explained Ryan's insulting visit, the divorce announcement, and his attempt to steal all the assets. Chloe, who had long urged Arya to stop pretending, could barely contain her anger. "I've been telling you for years, Arya. Ryan Vance is a parasite. He only knows how to spend your money while enjoying the illusion of success you built for him," Chloe yelled over the phone, her voice thick with frustration. Arya closed her eyes. "I know, Chloe. But it's over. He crossed the line. He thinks all this is his and he gifted it to another woman. I will not allow his stupidity and arrogance to go unpunished. I want him to lose everything, Chloe. Not just the money but his pride too. Exactly 30 minutes later, Mr. Harrison, Aria's personal attorney, arrived at her VIP hospital room. He was a middle-aged man, intellectual and calm-looking, always impeccably dressed, but he possessed unmatched legal shrewdness. He carried a leather briefcase containing Aria's secret documents. Mr. Harrison saw Aria lying down, but he saw no weakness. He saw the fire burning in his client's eyes. "Mrs. Moore, I received your call. I deeply regret Mr. Vance's behavior." "What are your instructions?" he asked in a formal voice, yet full of loyalty. Aria asked him to sit beside her, and they began discussing the $1 million plan. This plan was a vengeance designed to be executed without screaming or physical altercations, only through court orders, bank notifications, and inevitable asset recovery. Aria explained that all the primary assets the luxury mansion Ryan claimed as his, the 2 sports cars he boasted about, and even a minority stake in the company he supposedly managed, had been acquired through legal entities controlled exclusively by Mr. Harrison. Ryan was only listed as a user or minority shareholder under a fragile trust relationship. Mr. Harrison ensured that the prenuptial agreement Ryan signed without reading the one, stipulating that all assets acquired before the marriage or through my personal investments are my exclusive property is ready to be filed along with the divorce suit, Aria said, leaning back on the pillow. "And regarding the real estate he gifted to Tiffany, ensure the foreclosure order is executed as soon as possible. That house is an asset of my company. Mr. Vance has no right to transfer it." The attorney smiled faintly. "It will be very simple, Mrs. Moore. Mr. Vance is a careless businessman. He enjoyed the luxury without verifying the legal details. All assets are already legally protected. As soon as the divorce suit is filed, all properties will be automatically frozen and ready to be recovered in your company's name. The bank notifications are also prepared. All the accounts he thought were joint were actually corporate accounts he used for operational expenses. I've instructed the bank to freeze and withdraw those funds, leaving only the legally required minimum." Aria nodded in satisfaction. "Execute everything today, Mr. Harrison. I want Ryan and his future new wife to marry under an illusion of success. Let them enjoy their party. I want the notifications of fund withdrawal and asset foreclosure to be my wedding gift to them." Aria smiled. For the first time since Ryan's arrival, it was a genuine smile, but it was cold, cruel, and calculating. That afternoon, Chloe visited Aria, bringing her clothes and discharge papers. Aria had insisted on leaving the hospital, feeling that her stay there would only reinforce in Ryan's mind the idea that she was truly weak. "I have to go, not to that house, but to the headquarters," Aria said, referring to a secret penthouse she used for work and client meetings, whose existence Ryan didn't even suspect. "We need to make sure Ryan and Mrs. Vance see my exclusive television interview. That will be the peak of the surprise." Meanwhile, at a luxury boutique in downtown Los Angeles, Ryan and Tiffany were immersed in their wedding preparations. Ryan brimmed with confidence. He felt he had reached the zenith of his life. He had abandoned his sick wife. He had seized all the wealth he believed was his, and he was marrying a young, ambitious woman. Tiffany was trying on wedding gowns with astronomical price tags. "Ryan, darling, is it true that the luxury mansion is already in my name?" Tiffany asked sweetly, embracing him. "There won't be any trouble with that sick woman, right?" Ryan laughed arrogantly. "Of course, my love. I'm no idiot in business. I've made sure all the assets are secure. I even sent her the divorce papers today while she lay helpless. She won't even have money to pay a decent lawyer. Don't worry about Aria. She's just a sad memory of the past." Ryan pulled out his mobile, opened his banking app, and bragged to Tiffany about the fantastic balance in his account. "Look, darling, we still have plenty of cash. Feel free to splurge on the dress." Elsewhere, Ryan's mother, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, called her son Mrs. Vance, who had always criticized and belittled Aria for her humble background, fully supported Ryan's decision to divorce. "My son, is it true you've finally gotten rid of that Aria?" she asked in a joyful voice. "Well done, son. A woman like that only brings bad luck to our family. You chose well with Tiffany. She has so much more class and elevates my status," Ryan boasted. "Of course, Mother. She won't get anything. I've already given the house to Tiffany. You can rest easy. I'll leave her on the street as soon as she leaves the hospital." Mrs. Vance burst out laughing. Both mother and son celebrated Aria's suffering. They savored every moment of their illusion of victory, unaware that a woman they deemed powerless had already decided their destiny from the shadows. By nightfall, Aria had arrived at her secret penthouse. She had changed into an elegant, expensive business suit, an outfit that radiated authority. She sat at her spacious desk in front of a monitor showing ascending performance charts for her company. Chloe sat opposite her, marveling at the drastic transformation. "Are you ready, Aria?" Chloe asked, offering her a glass of water. "Ryan is getting married tomorrow. It will be the last day he feels rich." Aria drank the water slowly. "I'm ready. Let him get married. I want him to savor the peak of his false happiness before I throw him into the abyss of despair." Aria rotated the monitor and showed Chloe a video she had discreetly recorded with her small mobile camera. Ryan in the hospital uttering his cruel and insulting words. "This will be the most damning evidence in the trial, Chloe, and this will be the trailer for my TV interview." Aria called Mr. Harrison again. "Mr. Harrison, ensure that the notifications for the withdrawal of funds from all accounts Mr. Vance uses are sent tomorrow morning, right on his wedding day. No delays. I want that notification to be his morning surprise." The lawyer responded with his professional tone that everything was moving forward as planned. Aria hung up. She looked out the penthouse window at the beautiful nighttime view of the illuminated city. She felt no sorrow for Ryan. What she regretted was wasting 5 years of her life pretending to be weak to protect the ego of a man who didn't deserve it. Now, that time was over. The story of the sickly Aria ended today. Tomorrow, Aria Moore, the CEO with a $1 million monthly income, would rise to claim everything that was hers and, in the process, drag Ryan and Mrs. Vance from their throne of arrogance. Never again would she allow anyone to underestimate her effort, her strength, and above all, her heart. Aria was ready to enjoy a new chapter, one that would plunge Ryan into endless panic. That morning, the air was permeated with an aroma of triumph and arrogance. Ryan woke up with a wide smile. It was his wedding day to Tiffany, the day he would officially become the sole owner of all his luxurious assets, the day he would be rid of Aria, whom he considered sick and a burden. He was in a 5-star hotel where he and Tiffany would hold a lavish reception. Ryan looked at himself in the mirror, feeling powerful and successful. In his mind, he was a true winner who had tricked fate and eliminated the obstacle named Aria. Just as he was about to get ready, his mobile phone began vibrating with repeated notifications from various banks. Ryan ignored them, thinking they were promotional messages or morning spam, but the notifications kept coming insistently. With some irritation, he opened the banking application. His eyes widened as he stared at the phone screen, as if fire were emanating from it. The balance of his main account, the one he used for his business operations, which should have held hundreds of thousands of dollars, had suddenly dwindled to a minuscule figure. Barely a few thousand remained. The same had happened with his other savings accounts. "What the hell? What is wrong with this damn bank?" Ryan shouted, throwing the phone onto the bed. He thought it must be a system error or a hack. He tried to call his branch manager but got no answer. Cold sweat began to soak his forehead. How was this possible? He had withdrawn a large sum 2 days prior for the wedding expenses. The balance should be secure. He tried to calm himself. Maybe it was just a temporary glitch. In another room, Tiffany was also preparing. She wore her expensive wedding dress and glowed with happiness. She felt she had reached the peak of her life. She was marrying a rich man. She would receive a luxury mansion as a gift and become the mistress of a grand estate. Tiffany bragged about her new diamond ring to the makeup artist. "Look at this, it's a gift too. Ryan says the luxury mansion is already in my name. I'm going to be the lady of the house." Suddenly, the door to Tiffany's room burst open. It was Ryan. His face was no longer full of arrogance, but pale. His eyes radiated panic. Tiffany, something is wrong. The balance of all my accounts has been almost completely withdrawn. It's impossible. Ryan grabbed Tiffany's arm. Tiffany, who was smiling, now frowned. What? Withdrawn? Who would dare touch your money on our wedding day? Ryan, I bet it was Aria. That sick woman is taking revenge. Ryan shook his head in panic. No, impossible. She's paralyzed in the hospital. She has no power. Besides, this is my company's operational account, not a joint account. Ryan paced the room. His panic was contagious to Tiffany. The wedding would begin in a few hours, and he had just realized he didn't have enough cash to pay the remaining hotel expenses. Elsewhere, Ryan's mother, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, was getting ready at her house. She called Ryan to congratulate him. Her voice was full of joy. My son, today is your big day. You've finally gotten rid of that bad luck woman. I'm so happy you're marrying Tiffany. Ryan tried to hide his panic, forcing his voice. Yes, Mother, thank you. Listen, Mother, I'm having a small technical issue with the bank. Do you have any cash at home? Could you send me some? I'll pay you back later. Ryan didn't have the courage to tell his mother the truth. He feared Mrs. Vance would erupt and ruin the wedding. While Ryan and Tiffany dealt with their sudden financial panic, Aria enjoyed a quiet morning in her secret penthouse. She had already received Mr. Harrison's report. All fund withdrawal orders had been successfully executed at 8 a.m. sharp. Aria smiled in satisfaction. It was the perfect morning surprise. She was sitting in a luxurious armchair in her study, accompanied by Chloe, who looked equally thrilled. How do you think he's reacting, Chloe? Aria asked, sipping an herbal infusion. Chloe laughed softly. I bet Ryan is running around like a headless chicken right now. He'll think it's a miracle. It would never occur to him that the sick woman he abandoned is behind all of this. Chloe looked at Aria with pride. Now it's your turn to get ready. The makeup and wardrobe team will arrive soon. You need to make your appearance in tonight's interview an absolute bomb. This exclusive interview was Aria's secret weapon. She had been invited to speak about her company's success and global expansion plans. She accepted on one condition. The interview had to air during prime time, and she would be allowed to reveal a little about her life story. The goal was not only to boast about her wealth, but to publicly reveal her true identity to Ryan and Mrs. Vance, shattering the fantasy they lived in, believing Aria was a weak, poor woman. By the afternoon, Ryan and Tiffany's wedding was celebrated with great pomp, but behind Ryan's forced smile was anxiety gnawing at him. He kept looking at his phone, hoping for a response from the bank or his lawyers, but it was in vain. He had to use all the remaining cash he had to pay the vendors and hotel staff. Tiffany sensed something was wrong but tried to remain calm. She focused solely on her new status as Mrs. Ryan Vance and the promise of the luxury mansion awaiting her. As Ryan and Tiffany took photos with the guests, Mr. Harrison appeared in the hotel lobby. He didn't come as a guest, he came as Aria's representative. With a calm but firm stride he approached Ryan, whose face instantly tightened. Mr. Harrison, what are you doing here? Did you come as a guest? Ryan asked, trying to force a smile. Mr. Harrison did not return the smile. Mr. Vance, I'm here on behalf of my client, Mrs. Aria Moore. A divorce suit has been officially filed today, and I bring you a court summons. Mr. Harrison handed him a thick envelope. This suit also includes a notice of foreclosure and recovery of all real estate and company vehicles belonging to my client that you have been using, including the house you claim as yours and the sports cars you drive. Ryan felt his blood run cold. His face turned paler than Aria's in the hospital. What? Impossible. Those assets are mine. Aria doesn't have that much money. She's just a sick woman I supported, he exclaimed sharply. Mr. Harrison shook his head. Mrs. Aria Moore is the CEO of Ascendant Dynamics Global, a tech company valued in the billions of dollars. All the assets you've enjoyed for the past 5 years are corporate assets, camouflaged through a prenuptial agreement you yourself signed. You only had rights of use, Mr. Vance, and those rights have been revoked today, along with a divorce suit for abandonment and verbal abuse. Ryan squeezed the envelope. He saw that Tiffany, who was nearby, had heard every word Mr. Harrison said, and was in shock. Ryan tried to stay calm. This is a trick by that woman. She won't get anything. We'll fight this in court. Mr. Harrison smiled coldly. "Do what you wish, Mr. Vance, but I inform you that the asset recovery team will execute their mission tomorrow morning. I suggest you and Mrs. Wells do not spend the night in that mansion. Its title no longer belongs to you. Congratulations on your wedding, Mr. Vance, and I hope you are not surprised by what you see on the news tonight." Mr. Harrison turned and left, leaving Ryan completely devastated, surrounded by wedding guests who were now beginning to whisper. Tiffany approached, her face contorted with anger. "Ryan, what does this mean? You lied to me. You said the house was yours," Tiffany shouted, oblivious to the guests. Ryan tried to calm her, but he himself was on the verge of collapse. What should have been the happiest day of his life had turned into a disaster. He had lost all his money and was facing a divorce suit. And most humiliatingly, he had just discovered that Arya, the woman he called his sickly wife, was actually a millionaire who had controlled his life all this time. Ryan realized he had thrown away a diamond for a mere stone, and now that diamond awaited him with the whip of the law. The wedding night, which should have been the peak of happiness for Ryan and Tiffany, turned into an inevitable nightmare. After the humiliating encounter with Mr. Harrison in the hotel lobby, Ryan dragged Tiffany to their suite. Ryan's emotions swung between fury, searing shame, and overwhelming panic. He slammed the table, spilled drinks, and shouted as if the whole world were conspiring against him. Tiffany, once full of love, was now furious. Her expensive wedding dress weighed on her, a reflection of the misfortune she had just felt. "Ryan, tell me, it's not a joke, is it? The house isn't yours, nor are the cars," Tiffany demanded, her voice sharp as a knife. "You told me Arya was a poor woman you supported. You're a total liar." Ryan clutched his head in frustration. "It's not a lie. I was convinced it was mine. I paid the installments. I managed it." He tried to convince Tiffany, but his voice was trembling. His mind began to fill with deadly doubt. Mr. Harrison's words about Arya being the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company hit him like a hammer. It's impossible, Arya? So fragile, so dedicated to housework and her old books? Instead of celebrating their marriage, they spent the night arguing heatedly, blaming each other. Tiffany felt deceived and enraged. She had married Ryan believing his wealth was genuine. Ryan was furious, realizing that for 5 years he had been a puppet unknowingly supported by Arya. At 10 p.m., Ryan called his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. Mrs. Vance, who had just returned from the wedding reception brimming with pride, cheerfully answered, "What's up, son? Do you already miss your mother? How's the first night?" Ryan couldn't hold back anymore. "Mother, you have to come home now. We're in big trouble." Ryan told her about Mr. Harrison's visit, the divorce suit, and most seriously, the threat of foreclosure on the house. The laughing Mrs. Vance was instantly silent. "What? Foreclosing the house? Impossible. That Arya has nothing. It must be a bluff. Ryan, don't panic." "It's not a bluff, Mother. The lawyer said Arya is the CEO of a tech company with billions in assets. We have to go there now and grab all the valuables before they arrive," Ryan yelled. Ryan's panic finally made Mrs. Vance realize the severity of the situation. She asked her driver to take her quickly to the luxury mansion, whose ownership she was now about to lose. Meanwhile, Arya was trying on clothes in her secret penthouse for the next evening's TV interview. She was reading a report from Mr. Harrison. Ryan and Tiffany hadn't yet left the hotel, and Mrs. Vance was on her way to the house. Arya only smiled faintly. "Ryan is too arrogant to believe this is real. Mr. Harrison, let them have a surprise tomorrow morning." The next morning, Ryan and Tiffany hurried out of the hotel toward the mansion. They were surprised to see a tow truck with the logo of a repossession company already parked at the gate. Ryan rushed out of the taxi. His face was gaunt from lack of sleep, and his eyes were bloodshot. "Hey, what are you doing? This is my house. You can't enter." Ryan shouted at 2 burly operators who were picking the lock. One of the men, who seemed like the team leader, showed him a court order for foreclosure signed by Mr. Harrison. "Sorry, sir. According to this document, this property and everything inside it are assets of the company Ascendant Dynamics Global, and we have orders to recover and evict the occupants as of today. You no longer have any legal rights to this property." Ryan tried to rip the paper. "No, this is a trick. I'll call my lawyer. You can't do this." Suddenly, Mrs. Eleanor Vance arrived at the scene. Seeing her son arguing with the operators, she immediately jumped out of the car. "Stop! Don't touch this house! My son is the owner! Where's that Aria? Tell her to come out and face me!" Mrs. Vance yelled hysterically. The foreclosure team leader remained calm. "We are only executing a court order, ma'am. If you don't cooperate, we will have to call the police." Ryan, Mrs. Vance, and Tiffany tried to rush into the house to retrieve their valuables, but they stopped dead in the living room. They saw Aria's friend Chloe, sitting comfortably on one of the luxurious sofas alongside Mr. Harrison and several burly private bodyguards. Chloe smiled ironically. "Good morning, Mr. Vance, Mrs. Wells, and Mrs. Vance." Chloe greeted them with a falsely kind voice. "Congratulations on the wedding. Too bad you got married at the wrong time. We've come to collect a belated wedding gift from Aria." Ryan pointed a trembling finger at Chloe. "Chloe, you must be Aria's puppet. Where is my wife? Tell her to come. I need to talk to her." Chloe took a sip of hot coffee. "Aria is not here, Ryan. She's busy. She doesn't have time to waste on low-level drama. She's a CEO, remember? But she left a message. All your personal belongings will be packed into 4 boxes and left on the curb. The rest are corporate assets that we must seize." Mrs. Vance shrieked hysterically. "Personal belongings? No. This furniture, this decor, this vase, this is all ours. We enjoyed it." Mr. Harrison stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance. All the furniture, paintings, electronic devices, and even that vase on the table are registered as headquarters furnishings for the company in a camouflaged manner. Everything was purchased in the name of Mrs. Moore's company. Mr. Vance is only entitled to his clothes, his razor, and his toothbrush. That's all." Ryan felt the world collapsing. He turned to look at Tiffany, who was now staring at him with hate and rage. Tiffany realized that Ryan truly had nothing. All the wealth he boasted about was just a loan. "Liar, Ryan. You said you were rich, a successful businessman. It turns out you're nothing more than a parasite supported by the wife you called sickly." Tiffany tore off her diamond ring and threw it in Ryan's face. "I want nothing more to do with you, divorce." Tiffany ran out of the house, leaving Ryan plunged into double despair, abandoned by his new wife on the day of foreclosure, and with his entire fortune vanished in an instant. Mrs. Vance hugged Ryan and yelled at Chloe and Mr. Harrison. "Please, don't take the house. We have nowhere to live. Aria is wicked. How can she do this? She's a heartless woman." Chloe stood up and looked at Mrs. Vance and Ryan with cold eyes. "You ask why? Ask yourselves, Mrs. Vance. You and your son humiliated Aria when she was most vulnerable. You called her a bad luck woman, a burden. You laughed at her while she was in the hospital. And what she is doing now, this is not a crime. It is legal justice valued at $1 million a month." Amidst the desperate chaos, Ryan pulled out his mobile and called Aria from a new number. He wanted to beg her, plead with her, ask her to cancel everything. His former husband's call, in shock and panic, finally came through. "Aria, it's Ryan. Please, stop all this. I beg you. I know I was wrong. Don't take this house from me. I'll cancel my marriage to Tiffany. I'll come back to you. I'll take care of you," Ryan pleaded, his voice full of sobs. On the other end of the line, Aria, who was having her makeup done for her TV interview, held the phone in silence. "Come back to me? Take care of me?" She laughed. It was no longer a laugh of pain, but of victory. "I don't need a caretaker, Ryan. I need my freedom. The house is already foreclosed, and Tiffany has left you. And you know what? I'm not sick anymore. It turns out the source of my illness was you. Aria, please. If not the house, at least my money. I have nothing now." Aria was silent for a moment. "Your money?" "That money was never yours, Ryan. It was my company's. You only borrowed it, and I've recalled the loan. Now, I expect you and Mrs. Vance to vacate that house immediately before security guards have to drag you out. Enjoy your new real life, Ryan, a life without masks and without my money." Aria hung up. A satisfied smile played on her lips. Ryan dropped the phone. He turned to look at Chloe and Mr. Harrison, his face full of regret. He had just lost everything. And the most painful part was that he had just begged the woman he had humiliated as his sickly wife 2 days earlier. The chaos in Arya's luxury mansion ended with a painful eviction. Ryan and Mrs. Vance had to be escorted out of the house that had been the symbol of their luxury and arrogance. They stood on the curb next to 4 old boxes containing Ryan's remaining personal belongings. Their faces were covered in the dust of defeat and unbearable shame. Mrs. Vance wept hysterically, unable to accept the treatment she had received. "Ryan, this is unfair. How can she have so much money? She must have made a pact with the devil. Where are we going to live now, son? Your mother doesn't want to live in a miserable place." "Mrs. Vance cried, hitting Ryan's chest. Ryan, still reeling from Tiffany's betrayal and the bitter reality that he was a propertyless man, had no choice but to face his mother's wrath. "Calm down, Mother. We'll find another lawyer, one more competent than Mr. Harrison. We'll fight Arya in court," he exclaimed, though his own voice sounded desperate. They finally had to take a taxi to a modest rental apartment where Ryan had lived before marrying Arya. That house was the only property truly in Ryan's name, an inheritance from his late father, and its condition was far from the luxury they had enjoyed for the past 5 years. Mrs. Vance complained and blamed Arya the entire ride. They arrived at the cramped, dusty rental apartment, where suffocating darkness and silence greeted them. The apartment brutally contrasted with the luxury mansion they had just abandoned. While Ryan and Mrs. Vance sank into despair, Arya was busy preparing for her public appearance. She was no longer weakly lying down. In an elegant evening gown and flawless makeup, Arya looked like a goddess of victory. Her friend Chloe accompanied her with a look of admiration. "Do you think this is enough, Chloe? Do I look like a cruel CEO?" Arya asked with an ironic smile. Chloe shook her head. "You look like a just CEO. You've done justice to yourself, Arya, and in the process, you've given Ryan and Mrs. Vance the most expensive lesson of their lives." Chloe handed Arya a diamond necklace. "This is my lucky necklace. It's time for you to show your true crown." In the glamorous television studio, Arya was interviewed by a famous host. The interview went smoothly, discussing the business strategies of her innovative company. Finally, the host moved to a more personal topic. "Mrs. Moore, you are truly an incredible woman with a brilliant career, but we've heard your personal life has suffered some turbulence recently. Would you be willing to share a bit with our viewers?" Arya took a deep breath, and her sharp gaze pierced the camera as if speaking directly to Ryan and Mrs. Vance. "Of course I will share it, because I believe it will be an important lesson for many women in the world," Arya said in a calm, authoritative voice. "For the past 5 years, I lived in the shadow of a man who never knew my true worth. I chose to hide my identity and my wealth so as not to hurt his ego. I let him enjoy a house, cars, and luxuries that I actually paid for." "And what was that man's reaction?" the host asked dramatically. "That man called me his sickly wife, abandoned me in a hospital bed, and tried to strip me of all my corporate assets to give them to another woman. He challenged me. He told me he had already taken all my property," Arya responded. Then she smiled, a smile that silenced the entire studio. "I accepted his challenge. I only needed 2 days to reclaim everything. I recalled all the loans, canceled the usage rights for the company assets, and filed for divorce. And most importantly, I did all of this with a smile, because I knew he had just lost the woman who provided him with a $1 million a month life." Arya finished her story with a powerful message. Never underestimate a woman. Sometimes silence and kindness are the mask of the greatest strength, and the moment that mask is removed, you will witness the consequences of humiliation. Meanwhile, in the gloomy rental apartment, Ryan and Mrs. Vance watched the interview on an old television set. They were silent, staring at the screen with wide eyes. Arya's radiant face, her luxurious gown, and the confession of her $1 million monthly income hit them like a hurricane. "Ryan, that's Arya. She's saying she's the owner of that company. She supported us all this time," Mrs. Vance yelled, her voice filled not with anger, but with fear. Ryan couldn't speak. He saw the woman he had humiliated 2 days earlier, now sitting on a throne of glory with a crown of unimaginable wealth. Ryan realized how stupid he had been. Not only had he abandoned a faithful wife, but he had abandoned the source of his wealth and comfort. Ryan's panic now transformed into deep, nauseating regret. All the cruel words he had spat out at the hospital now echoed in his head, a testament to his own stupidity. Impossible, Mother. It's a hoax. She just wants revenge. She wants to publicly ridicule us. Ryan tried to deny it, but his voice broke. Deep down, he knew everything Arya said was the irrefutable truth. The moment the interview ended, Ryan's phone rang. It was Mr. Harrison's number. Ryan answered hesitantly. "Tell me." Mr. Harrison's voice was calm on the other end. "Mr. Vance, I hope you and your mother saw Mrs. Moore's interview. I called to inform you that the divorce suit and asset recovery will proceed to the next phase. And as additional information, our team just towed away the 2 sports cars you had parked in front of your rental apartment. Those vehicles are also corporate assets. Enjoy the replay of Mrs. Moore's interview. It will be the only entertainment you have left." Mr. Harrison hung up without giving Ryan a chance to respond. Ryan dropped the phone to the floor. He ran out of the apartment. In front of the house, 2 large tow trucks had just driven away his 2 beloved sports cars, the symbols of his pride. Now they were gone. Ryan screamed, his voice breaking. Not only was he left without a house and without money, but now he didn't even have a decent car. He had truly returned to square one, but this time without pride. Mrs. Vance rushed out. Seeing the cars being towed away, she embraced Ryan. "Son, we have to plead with her, beg for her forgiveness. We must get her back. She is our only hope." Ryan looked at the dark night sky. His tears mixed with sweat. He realized that the wedding gift he had just received from Arya was not a luxury mansion, but the total foreclosure of his entire life. Arya had won not with drama, but with unimaginable power. She had brought Ryan down from the height of arrogance to the depths of poverty and eternal regret. Ryan knew that tonight he would go to bed as the most regretful man in the world, while Arya would go to bed as the most powerful CEO. The next morning, after his luxury cars were repossessed, Ryan woke up in the hot, cramped rental room with unbearable nausea. He tried to assimilate that the nightmare was actually a bitter reality. Yes, Ryan, the arrogant and self-assured man, was now penniless. Beside him, Mrs. Vance was still sleeping with a swollen face, clutching a bag of imitation jewelry that she believed was expensive. In fact, most of it had also been bought from Arya's asset inventory. Ryan's financial panic reached its peak. Not only had he lost his assets, but also his reputation. That morning, he tried to contact several business partners to borrow money, but all his calls went unanswered. Some partners even sent him short texts asking about Arya's interview the night before, accompanied by ironic emojis. Ryan realized that Arya had attacked him not only legally, but socially as well. Ryan got out of the squeaky bed and found the kitchen table empty. He opened the noisy small refrigerator. There was only a bottle of water and a piece of dry cheese. He felt hungry. In his former luxury mansion, he was accustomed to sumptuous breakfasts prepared by Arya or the maid service. Now he had to struggle for a simple cup of instant coffee. While Ryan was consumed by depression and hunger, Mrs. Vance woke up with a lost look. "Ryan, we can't keep going like this. I have to do something. We have to see her. Kneel at her feet and beg," Mrs. Vance cried. Ryan shook his head. "It's useless, Mother. Mr. Harrison said she doesn't want to see us. She only wants to handle everything through lawyers. Arya has changed so much. She is cruel, Mother." "She became cruel because you made her that way, Ryan," Mrs. Vance retorted sharply, although she knew she also shared the blame. "If you hadn't abandoned her when she was sick, if we hadn't humiliated her, we wouldn't be here." Regret began to seep into Mrs. Vance's mind, not out of remorse, but because of the financial consequences they had to face. In the middle of their argument, the old television in the corner came on. Arya's friend Chloe appeared on the screen of a popular morning show. Chloe had been invited to give more details about Arya's sensational divorce case. Ryan and Mrs. Vance instantly fell silent. They watched the television with wide, pale eyes. Chloe, looking sophisticated and confident, sat on an elegant studio sofa. "Good morning, Chloe. Your friend, Mrs. Moore's divorce case, has caused quite a stir. Can you confirm if Mr. Vance has truly been abandoned and lost all the assets he boasted about?" the host asked. Chloe smiled calmly. "Yes, that's correct. Arya filed for divorce, and all assets, the house, vehicles, and even most of the cash Mr. Vance possessed have been recovered in Arya's company's name. There is something I want to clarify. Mr. Vance always thought he was the sole owner of those assets. In reality, he was nothing more than a temporary manager financed by Arya. In the rental apartment, Ryan's face grew even paler. Mrs. Vance gripped her son's arm. Ryan knew that every word coming out of Chloe's mouth was a nail in the coffin of his reputation. The host continued. We've also heard that Mrs. Moore was abandoned in the hospital and humiliated by her ex-husband. Is there any evidence to support this claim? Chloe nodded. Of course, we have video and audio evidence from when Mr. Vance went to the hospital and humiliated Arya, calling her a sickly wife and declaring the seizure of her assets. We will present all this evidence to the court, but to give the public a lesson, Arya has allowed a part of that audio recording to be played. A dramatic silence fell, and then Ryan's voice, full of mockery and insults, clearly resonated across the country. Listen, sickly wife, I've filed for divorce. I've taken the luxury mansion and all the assets to give to my new wife. Ha ha. Ryan and Mrs. Vance shrank into the sofa. That recording was an inescapable humiliation. No, turn off the TV, Mother! Turn it off! Ryan yelled. But Mrs. Vance was frozen, unable to move. She watched as her son's face, once so arrogant, was now projected on television as that of a cruel and lying man. The host sighed. How cruel. So, we could say that Mr. Vance, simply by underestimating that his wife was a millionaire, lost everything, including his pride, in less than 48 hours? Chloe looked at the camera with a serious expression. Exactly. Arya did not act out of emotion, but out of principle. She wanted to prove that wealth, power, and freedom were hers, and no man had the right to humiliatingly snatch them away. Mr. Vance received what he deserved. He lost everything because of his arrogance and his ignorance about the value of a woman. When Chloe finished speaking, Ryan felt his mother's hateful gaze. Mrs. Vance stood up and pointed a trembling finger at Ryan. You ruined us, Ryan, with your dirty mouth. Now we won't get anything. I'm ashamed. I'm truly ashamed. Ryan tried to defend himself. I didn't know, Mother. I swear I didn't know she was so rich. She always dressed simply. She always said she was sick. How was I supposed to know? Because you never cared about her, Mrs. Vance retorted. You only cared about yourself. Now the whole country knows who we are. We are the laughingstock. The next day, Ryan and Mrs. Vance had no choice but to look for work. Ryan, once an entrepreneur and company owner, could only secure a job as a delivery driver with a borrowed car. Meanwhile, Mrs. Vance, who used to frequent luxury boutiques and salons, had to accept the bitter reality of working as an employee in a convenience store in a corner of the city. Every day, they had to swallow their shame. Some customers recognized them from Arya's interview and the talk show and gave them looks of pity or even cutting remarks. Ryan and Mrs. Vance realized that Arya's revenge was not about money, but about humiliation. Arya had publicly avenged her humiliation before the entire country, causing their pride to shatter. Now, they lived in profound regret, realizing that the woman they had cruelly abandoned was their sole protector and source of luxury. Ryan couldn't help but look at photos of Arya on the internet every day, comparing the Arya who was once weak with the Arya who now shone on the global business stage. That regret was a much deadlier illness than the exhaustion Arya had suffered. 3 weeks had passed since Arya filed for divorce, and Ryan lost everything. Today was the day of their first divorce hearing. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, filled with journalists and the public drawn by the drama of adultery, humiliation, and sensational hidden wealth. Arya arrived heavily escorted by her personal bodyguards, alongside her solid lawyer, Mr. Harrison, and her loyal friend, Chloe. Arya wore a dark suit that radiated authority and calm. She sat upright, looking straight ahead, paying no attention to her ex-husband. On the other hand, Ryan and Mrs. Vance arrived at the courthouse looking completely different. Ryan seemed dejected, wearing an old suit that no longer fit him well. Mrs. Vance, always dressed extravagantly, now wore modest clothes and tried to hide her face from the cameras. Both were accompanied by an inexperienced-looking young lawyer whom Ryan had reluctantly hired with the last money he had left. When the hearing began, Ryan looked at Arya, hoping to find a glimmer of warmth or compassion in his ex-wife's eyes, but what he found was the cold, decisive, and calculating gaze of a businesswoman. Ryan's heart sank. He realized that the Arya he knew, the weak, submissive Arya, was dead. The first session was dominated by Mr. Harrison's presentation. With a strong, confident voice, Mr. Harrison's presentation. Harrison read the details of the divorce suit, including abandonment, verbal abuse, and betrayal when Arya was sick. He played the audio recording of Ryan humiliating Arya in the hospital, which silenced the entire room. Ryan's lawyer tried to counter, claiming Ryan was simply stressed and that the recording had been edited, but the impact was already irreversible. And then came the most decisive part, the revelation of the financial and asset details. Mr. Combs to the blacks.org. Harrison presented irrefutable evidence, the prenuptial agreement signed by Ryan, stipulating that all properties obtained through Arya's personal businesses were her exclusive property. And then Mr. Harrison began to reveal Arya's true identity. "Your Honor," Mr. Harrison said, "my client, Mrs. Arya Moore, has concealed her true identity until now to preserve family harmony. She is the sole owner and CEO of Ascendant Dynamics Global, a technology company operating in the field of artificial intelligence, with projects valued in the billions of dollars." Murmurs erupted in the courtroom. Ryan and Mrs. Vance were incredibly stunned. Although they had already seen it on television, hearing it in a court of law with legal evidence was like being swept away by a tsunami. Mr. Harrison projected Arya's financial reports onto a large screen. Mrs. Moore's average net monthly income amounts to $1 million. All the properties, the luxury mansion, the vehicles, the investment accounts that Mr. Vance claimed as his, are inventory assets purchased with funds from Mrs. Moore's company. The ownership was only camouflage to make Mr. Vance feel comfortable. Ryan stood up, full of rage and desperation. "Lie! It's a trick! If you're so rich, why did you always say you were sick? Why did you always dress like a normal person?" Ryan shouted as tears streamed down his cheeks. The judge pounded the gavel, demanding silence. Arya looked at Ryan and, for the first time in court, spoke to him directly. "I was sick because I was exhausted covering your lies and financing your ego, Ryan," Arya said, her voice calm but sharp. "And I dressed simply because I hoped you would love me, not my money. But you couldn't love me even when I was sick. You were only interested in the money you thought was yours," Ryan tried to counter. "But you tricked me. You hid all this from me." Mr. Harrison immediately interrupted him. "Mr. Vance, Mrs. Moore did not trick you. You tricked yourself. Under the law, you signed a contract that clearly separated the assets. My client simply protected her privacy. On the contrary, it was you who committed abandonment and attempted to steal my client's corporate assets." Ryan's lawyer attempted to argue that Arya should pay compensation for the psychological damage Ryan had suffered due to identity fraud, but Mr. Harrison quickly dismissed it. "Psychological damage? The one who should claim psychological damages is my client." Mr. Vance humiliated her, calling her sickly when she was struggling with extreme job stress. "We have video evidence. We also have proof that Mr. Vance humiliated her." Vance remarried 2 days after filing for divorce, and evidence that Mr. Vance not only knew nothing about Mrs. Moore's wealth, but also contributed nothing to it, Mr. Harrison said, presenting documents of bank transfers proving that all of Ryan's money came from Arya's corporate accounts. Arya stood up, addressed the judge, but her gaze fell once more on Ryan and Mrs. Vance. "Your Honor, I only desire a respectful divorce. I ask nothing from Mr. Vance. Only that he return the remaining portion of the assets he attempted to take, and that he stay away from me. I lost 5 years of my life trying to love a man who only loved money. I just want to start my true life, and I hope my story serves as a lesson to everyone. Never underestimate a woman who seems weak, because when she decides to stand up, no one can tear her down." Ryan and Mrs. Vance lowered their heads. Their faces were red with shame. They realized they had no argument before the court. Ryan was a man divorced for abandonment, verbal abuse, and betrayal. And most humiliatingly, he was a man whose life, financed by the woman he had humiliated, had been publicly exposed. The hearing was adjourned for the final decision. Arya quickly left, surrounded by journalists. She only smiled mysteriously. Ryan and Mrs. Vance were left alone in the slowly emptying courtroom. Now all they had left was to blame each other. "This is all your fault, Mother. Why did you always belittle her? Now we are marked as thieves and scammers across the country," Ryan shouted hoarsely. "You were the one who cheated on her, Ryan. You were the one who abandoned her when she was sick. You were the one who was too blind to see who she was," Mrs. Vance retorted as her tears flowed. They both realized that this hearing not only ended their marriage, but officially ended their reputation and their life of luxury. Arya had won completely, proving that true power lies not in borrowed status, but in intelligence and effort that had been underestimated. After the devastating first divorce hearing, Ryan and Mrs. Vance were at the lowest point of their lives. The media coverage of the trial worsened things even further. Ryan was fired from his delivery job by his boss, who learned of his sensational case. Mrs. Vance was fired from the convenience store because customers felt uncomfortable and kept talking about their disgrace. Now they truly had no job, no money, and no reputation. Life in the cramped rental apartment was like a prison filled with the smell of mold and deep regret. Ryan and Mrs. Vance realized one thing: they couldn't move forward without directly apologizing to Arya. They decided to have one last confrontation, not to ask for the assets back, but to beg for clemency and perhaps minimal financial aid. They planned to wait for Arya in front of the headquarters of Ascendant Dynamics Global, the multi-billion-dollar tech company owned by Arya, which was now the symbol of his ex-wife's power. At noon, Ryan and Mrs. Vance stood on the busy sidewalk in front of the luxurious skyscraper. Ryan wore a worn shirt, and Mrs. Vance looked old and frail. They waited for hours under the strange stares of people who recognized them from television. In the late afternoon, a motorcade of luxury vehicles stopped in front of the building. Arya stepped out of one of the cars, surrounded by Mr. Harrison, Chloe, and her burly bodyguards. Arya wore sunglasses that concealed her cold gaze and looked elegant and authoritative. Seeing Arya, Ryan and Mrs. Vance immediately crossed the street and pushed through the crowd. Arya's bodyguards instantly stopped them, but Ryan and Mrs. Vance kept struggling. "Arya, wait, please," Ryan cried out, his voice cracking. Arya stopped, took off her sunglasses, and looked at Ryan and Mrs. Vance with an expressionless gaze that pierced them. She signaled to her bodyguards to step aside for a moment, setting the stage for this final drama. "What are you doing here, Ryan? Didn't we agree to handle everything through the court?" Arya asked in a calm voice. She was met by Ryan's tear-stained face. Ryan knelt in front of Arya, a humiliating scene for a man who was once so arrogant. "Arya, please forgive me. I know I was wrong. I'm the stupidest man in the world. I threw away a diamond for nothing," Ryan sobbed. "I didn't know you were so rich. My arrogance blinded me. I apologize for all those cruel words. Please, I'm not asking you to return the house, but please give me a job. I have nothing now. My mother doesn't have a job either." Mrs. Vance also knelt. Not an ounce of arrogance remained on her face. She grasped the hem of Arya's skirt. "Arya, please, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I always belittled you. I regret it, my dear. I regret calling you a bad luck woman. I didn't know you were the angel supporting our lives. Please, don't let my son stay on the street. We have nothing now, Mrs. Vance cried. Her tears wet the sidewalk. Chloe and Mr. Harrison watched in silence this drama of belated repentance. Arya looked at Ryan and Mrs. Vance kneeling. She took a deep breath, and her voice sounded cold and emotionless. "Regret? You regret because you lost my money, Ryan, Mrs. Vance, not because you hurt me. If I had remained the sickly wife you believed was poor, you would never have come to beg like this." Arya stepped back slightly. "I gave you 5 years of opportunities. For 5 years, I let you enjoy a life of luxury. For 5 years, I hoped you would value my worth, not just my fortune. But what did you do? You laughed at me, abandoned me, and tried to rob me when I was most vulnerable." Arya looked directly at Ryan. "I won't give you a job, Ryan. I won't give you money. If I did, you would never learn." You need to feel what it means to rebuild your life from scratch, without a mask of luxury and without my money. You need to feel what it's like to be belittled, as I felt before." Ryan tried to reach for Arya's hand. "But I was your husband, Arya. We were happy." Arya pulled her hand away. "We weren't happy. We lived a lie. And now that lie is over. I have become the true Arya Moore, and there is no longer a place for you in this world." Arya turned to Mrs. Vance. "Mrs. Vance, I hope you have learned that a woman's honor is not determined by her family background, but by her heart. I pray that you find peace and can earn an honest living." Arya signaled her bodyguards to leave and ordered them not to allow Ryan and Mrs. Vance near that office area. Ryan and Mrs. Vance were forcibly dragged away by the guards. Ryan kept screaming Arya's name, struggling, but Arya had already entered the imposing building without looking back. Ryan and Mrs. Vance's tears now mixed with searing shame. They realized that Arya had closed all doors. Ryan looked at the tall building and realized that he had not only abandoned a wealthy woman, but also an intelligent and strong woman. He realized that Arya was not cruel, but simply giving them the deserved consequences for their actions. Ryan hugged his crying mother and realized that their lives were completely ruined and that this destruction was his own doing. This last confrontation had only confirmed the facts. Arya had moved on, leaving them both in a past full of regret. After the humiliating confrontation in front of Arya's office, Ryan and Mrs. Vance returned to the rental apartment heartbroken. They realized there was no turning back. Arya had closed the door not only financially, but emotionally as well. Their regret was no longer a drama to perform in front of Arya, but a real burden they had to bear. The next day, Ryan tried to contact Tiffany, his ex-fiancée, who had abandoned him on the day of the foreclosure. He hoped that Tiffany had a minimum of empathy or perhaps some money left, but all his calls went unanswered. Ryan finally decided to go to the luxurious apartment Tiffany had rented before. He arrived there with a sinking heart. At Tiffany's apartment door, a cold-faced security guard greeted him. "I'm sorry, sir. Mrs. Wells moved out 2 weeks ago, vacated this apartment, and terminated the lease agreement," the guard said dryly. "She moved? Where? Did she leave any message?" Ryan asked pleadingly. The guard shook his head. "Mrs. Wells didn't leave any message. She simply left with a large suitcase. She had already taken all her belongings. She seemed to be in a hurry." Ryan felt the world crumble once more. The woman he had chosen to replace Arya, the woman he believed would bring him happiness and status. It turned out she abandoned him without a trace as soon as she learned that Ryan had no property. Tiffany was only interested in assets. And when those assets disappeared, Tiffany also disappeared. Ryan realized how hypocritical Tiffany was and how stupid he had been to compare her to Arya. Arya concealed her wealth but was always faithfully by his side. Tiffany only appeared when there was money. Ryan returned to the rental apartment with the bad news. Mrs. Vance, who was anxiously waiting, instantly became hysterical. "What? That woman left? She only wanted our money. How brazen!" Mrs. Vance yelled, unleashing her fury. "It's done, Mother. That woman is no better than I am. We were both blinded by wealth," Ryan said, his voice flat. He now sounded genuinely repentant. This bitterness caused Ryan to start seeing his own mistakes, not just blaming the situation. Ryan and Mrs. Vance's financial situation reached its worst point. They began selling their last personal belongings, the watches Ryan had bought with Arya's money, the imitation jewelry Mrs. Vance boasted about. The money from the sale barely covered food for a few days. They were forced to eat rice with barely any side dishes, a painful contrast to the lavish feasts they had always enjoyed in the past. One night, Ryan had a high fever. Mrs. Vance tried to care for him with cheap medicines. Ryan, in his delirium, moaned and called out Arya's name. "Arya, I'm sorry. Please, help me." Mrs. Vance sat by her son. Her tears fell. "I know, son. I regret it too. Arya was a good woman. If only we hadn't been so blind." Mrs. Vance hugged Ryan, realizing how terrible the karma was that had befallen them. Meanwhile, the news of Arya's divorce continued to attract public attention. Arya held a press conference with Chloe and Mr. Harrison. This press conference was not about her drama, but about Arya's announcement of philanthropy. Arya announced that she would donate most of the money recovered from Ryan's attempts to charities and the construction of schools for underprivileged children. I want to show that money that was misused for arrogance can be used for good. I don't want this money to bring bad luck. I hope this is a new beginning, not only for me, but for many people, Arya said with a sincere smile to the cameras. Ryan and Mrs. Vance watched the press conference on the television of a small restaurant where they were sharing a plate of rice. Ryan looked at the screen, seeing Arya, who now radiated a noble aura. She's an incredible woman, Ryan whispered, his voice full of belated admiration. Not only is she rich, but she has a heart of gold, and I abandoned her. Mrs. Vance cried silently. She saw that Arya, the woman she had humiliated, had now become a heroine. She compared Arya's fate with her own. Arya had risen, and they had fallen. Mrs. Vance realized that true regret came when she saw her son Ryan, sick in a rental apartment without a dime, abandoned by the woman he had chosen, and forgotten by the world. Arya's $1 million a month wealth was now a painful fairy tale, an eternal reminder of their stupidity and arrogance. They had finally reached rock bottom. Total bankruptcy, not only of their assets but also of their will to live. They knew there was no more help. Ryan and Mrs. Vance had to accept that this was the consequence of their actions, a financial karma orchestrated by the woman they once called their sickly wife. They had to start their lives from scratch, without luxury, without recognition, and without hope. A year passed, and life spun on its axis, carrying Arya to the highest peak, while Ryan and Mrs. Vance sank into the abyss of poverty and regret. Arya no longer concealed her identity. She was Arya Moore, the world-renowned CEO, an inspiring woman who had led her company, Ascendant Dynamics Global, to unimaginable heights. She appeared on the covers of major business magazines. She was respected by her colleagues and praised by society for her story of elegant revenge and philanthropy. Arya not only built a business empire, but she also built her self-image as a symbol of the power of the underestimated woman. The luxury mansion, once foreclosed, now served as a business incubator center for young women. A sweet irony for Ryan and Mrs. Vance. Arya, free from the bitter memories of her past, lived peacefully in a new penthouse she had designed herself. Her loyal friend Chloe was promoted to vice president, becoming Arya's trusted partner. One evening, Arya had an important business meeting. She was now healthy, radiant, and full of laughter. The stress that once confined her to a hospital bed had long disappeared, replaced by genuine happiness and satisfaction. She smiled when Mr. Harrison brought her the final documents. The divorce decree was final and had legal effect. "Congratulations, Mrs. Moore," Mr. Harrison said, handing her the papers. "You are completely free now. There is no longer any relationship with Mr. Vance, and all assets have been fully recovered." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. You have done more than your duty as a lawyer," Arya replied, accepting the documents. She looked at them for a moment and then set them aside emotionlessly. "Now, our focus is on the new project in Europe. The past is over." Meanwhile, Ryan and Mrs. Vance's fate was very different. After a year of struggling without a stable job, they had to move from that cramped rental apartment to a miserable room in a boarding house on the outskirts of the city. Ryan worked as a day laborer, earning barely enough to eat. He could no longer hide. His reputation was completely ruined, and every time he tried to get a decent job, the story of Arya's interview and his humiliating audio recording followed him like a shadow. Mrs. Vance, now old and sickly from malnutrition and stress, spent most of her time in the boarding house room. She was no longer arrogant. Every day she regretted the harsh words she had said to Arya. She cried often, not only for the hard life, but because she realized that she herself had ruined her son's future. One night, Ryan was sitting, dazed, in front of the boarding house. He saw Arya appear on the community television of a restaurant across the street. Arya was giving an inspiring speech at an international forum. "A woman's power is not measured by her husband's support, but by the firmness with which she rises after falling. Do not let others define your worth. A woman's true crown is her honor, her intelligence, and her financial freedom," Arya said in her speech. Ryan looked at the screen with tears in his eyes. He no longer hated Arya. He felt admiration and regret instead. Ryan realized that he had divorced happiness, nobility, and his own honor. He had traded the woman who gave him everything for a moment of arrogance. That regret was now the only asset he had left. In the boarding house room, Mrs. Vance called out Ryan's name weakly. "Ryan, I want to apologize to you. I was wrong. I made you an arrogant man. We hurt Arya. This is our karma now, son." Ryan walked in and hugged his mother. "We have to accept it, Mother. Arya was right. We have to start over from scratch. This time without arrogance and without trying to snatch others' rights." On the other side of the city, Arya celebrated a new achievement. She no longer sought love or revenge. She found true love in herself and her work. She often dined with Chloe and Mr. Harrison, celebrating her freedom and success. Arya proved that her new ending was not to be someone's wife, but to rule her own destiny as the strong and respected Arya Moore. She won the battle against humiliation, and the crown of honor now rested perfectly upon her head. And so, my friends, Arya's story ends. Remember, never underestimate a woman who seems weak, because when she stands up, she will never ask for help. Arya taught us that honor and self-worth are much more valuable than billions. Thank you all for following. I hope this story sparks your interest in social issues. If you are moved, like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel, Apex Stories. Together, let's spread positive energy and protect the light. Thank you.